The planet Orcs had long been a quiet, peaceful colony located far from the hustle and bustle of the galaxy. A place known for its welcoming atmosphere, it had become a safe haven for travelers of all kinds, humans and aliens alike. Among the colonists was a human doctor named Ethan, who had made Orcs his home. With a gentle demeanor and quick hands, he had become famous for treating those in need, always offering his services with a smile. Ethan had seen many patients in his time on Orcs. Some came with simple injuries, others with illnesses, but none were quite like the visitor who arrived one fateful morning. The sound of a spaceship tearing through the skies broke the usual calm of the colony. The spacecraft was no ordinary ship. It was massive and sleek, its silver surface gleaming in the light of Orcs' sun. As it landed, the very ground beneath Ethan's feet seemed to tremble. The towering craft sent a few nervous glances toward the direction of the landing site. Out of the ship stepped towering alien soldiers, each one clothed in intricate armor with strange symbols. They held a powerful presence, and their eyes were cold, unfamiliar to the peaceful world of Orcs. Following them was a figure that made everyone pause. She was a tall, graceful being, though her skin was a shade of deep purple, something neither the humans nor many of the aliens on Orcs had ever seen before. She walked with the aura of someone used to being in charge. Regal, confident, yet clearly wounded, the alien princess, Naira, had arrived with her father's elite guards, but her steps faltered, and it was obvious she was not in a good condition. Ethan saw her from a distance, noting the pain etched across her face. His medical instincts kicked in. The moment he saw her stagger, he knew she had been badly injured. The alien soldiers quickly surrounded her, forming a protective circle, but her injuries could not be ignored. Naira's injury was serious, and as the silence spread over the crowd, the voice of the alien king's captain boomed. "Doctor, you will help her or face the consequences." Ethan didn't need to hear more. His training as a doctor was enough to know what he had to do, despite the gravity of the situation. Though he had heard of the alien king's daughter before, none of the stories told of her suffering. She was thought to be an almost perfect example of her people's strength. It was unthinkable that she would fall victim to such an injury. But now, here she was, bleeding and barely conscious. He moved quickly to her side. Ethan assessed her wounds carefully, noting the deep cuts on her arms and legs and what looked like an energy weapon wound to her side. The high-tech medical equipment the soldiers had brought along was designed for faster care, but it was clear that Naira needed something else, something that these machines weren't capable of. The aliens' technology couldn't fix what Naira needed. Ethan's eyes flashed with a realization. Perhaps the advanced technology wasn't enough. Perhaps it was human care that would make the difference. "She needs more than machines," Ethan said softly but firmly, turning to the captain of the soldiers. "You've tried everything you can. Now, let me help her the human way." The captain stared at Ethan in disbelief. "You, a mere human, think your methods can save her? Do you not realize who you are dealing with?" But before the captain could protest, the alien princess herself, though clearly exhausted and pained, raised a hand. Her voice, though quiet, was full of authority as she spoke. "Let him try," she said, her words carrying an unexpected softness. I trust him." Ethan gave her a nod of acknowledgement, though his mind was racing. He had no idea what challenges lay ahead, but he wouldn't let fear stop him. As the soldiers stepped back reluctantly, he turned his full attention back to Naira, laying his hands on her injured side gently. Ethan used his knowledge of human medicine, combined with natural remedies that he knew could treat wounds the best: simple bandages, compresses, and the right balance of pressure. Over hours, Ethan used his skills to manage her pain, staunch the bleeding, and carefully work to close her injuries. During those hours, Naira drifted in and out of consciousness, watching the human as if seeing him for the first time. There was something about his method, about the care he showed, that made her feel safe in a way no technology could. The king, observing from the side, stood stone-faced but silently acknowledged something strange was unfolding. Never had a human dared to take such risks in his court. Never had someone dared to challenge the expectations of alien culture for the sake of another life. Could this be the start of something different for his people? Could it be that humans had something more to offer than he had ever realized? As the hours passed, Ethan was surprised at how much improvement Naira made. For all the power of advanced technology, it was human ingenuity that seemed to be doing the trick. When the morning sun peeked through the windows, Naira opened her eyes, fully awake for the first time since her injury. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. It was clear the alien princess was beginning to understand just what Ethan had done for her. Not only had he saved her life, but he had done so in a way no one thought possible. Ethan, his tired eyes meeting hers, nodded. "You're welcome, but your journey's just begun." Little did he know, this was only the beginning of an unexpected adventure. After Naira's recovery, Ethan became the center of attention in a way he never imagined. Word quickly spread through the colony that he had been the one to heal the princess of the powerful alien empire. People from distant parts of Orcs began seeking his help, some out of curiosity, others hoping for a chance to meet the doctor who had saved the life of someone so important. Despite all the attention, Ethan never let it go to his head. The alien king's daughter, Naira, had become a living symbol of his ability, and now she was one of the most important figures in his life. Though Naira's physical wounds had been healed, she still carried the weight of her injury in her eyes, a deep exhaustion that even her new physical strength couldn't shake off. It was clear that healing wasn't just about the body. There were emotional wounds as well. When Ethan came to check on her the next day, she was sitting quietly on her bed, staring out the window. Her thoughts seemed far away, and for a moment, Ethan felt unsure how to approach her. He had cared for her body, but her heart was still a mystery. Naira noticed him entering and turned her gaze to him, the faintest smile playing on her lips. "You've worked harder than anyone ever has for me," she said softly, "but it is not just my body you healed, is it?" Ethan didn't answer immediately. He knew what she meant. "No, I didn't just fix your wounds," he said thoughtfully, "but it's the best I could do." His hands had worked their magic on her physical injuries, but his time with her had shown him that she needed more than that, much more. "The hardest part," Naira continued, her voice hesitant but sincere, "is knowing that I am the one who brought dishonor to my people. My injury was not just physical. It's a reminder of my failure to protect my kingdom." Ethan could see the deep sadness in her eyes. It wasn't just about her body. It was about pride, shame, and loss. These were things that no treatment or healing could immediately mend. But the human doctor understood something about emotional pain, something that his alien counterparts had perhaps never learned. "You can't blame yourself for something beyond your control," Ethan replied, his tone gentle but firm. "Your people trust you, don't they? They wouldn't want you to carry all that burden by yourself." Naira shook her head slowly, as if processing his words. For the first time since arriving on Orcs, she felt a small sense of comfort, something that went deeper than her wounds healing. The doctor wasn't just there to patch up her body. He was giving her a part of herself back that she had lost in her shame. "What happened to you, Naira," Ethan continued, "doesn't define who you are. It doesn't make you any less powerful or any less important. You have much to offer your people." At those words, Naira's eyes brightened for a moment. Ethan had seen this spark before in his own patients, the glimmer of hope that pushed them through their darkest days. As the days went by, Naira's condition continued to improve under Ethan's care, both physically and emotionally. However, it became clear that Naira was unlike any other patient he had treated. She wasn't simply responding to treatment. She was observing, learning, and absorbing everything she could about humanity. When she wasn't resting, she would ask Ethan many questions about life on Earth. "Tell me more about your planet," she asked one evening as they sat in a quiet corner of the medical facility, the night sky filled with stars. What do you humans do when you're not working or healing others? Ethan chuckled softly, appreciating the curiosity in her voice. Well, we work, but we also have fun. We play games, sing, dance, watch films, and enjoy each other's company. The hardest part is balancing all the work with enjoying life. Naira listened intently, as though trying to understand the humans Ethan spoke of, imagining them across the vast distance of the universe. I've always lived under such pressure, Naira said with a sigh. The expectations from my people, my father, the constant need to prove myself. I've forgotten what it's like to enjoy simple things. Ethan looked at her with understanding. That's something most people forget. Sometimes, we all get caught up in what we have to do. But life is about balance. It's not just about fighting for power or protecting something. It's about living. Her gaze met his, and something changed between them, a silent understanding passing through their shared moment. You've taught me a lot, Ethan, Naira said, the weight of her words heavier than she had intended. Not just about healing. You've taught me about living, too. As she spoke, something shifted within Ethan. He hadn't come to Auras expecting to save the galaxy or solve political struggles. He had come because he wanted to help people, to share his knowledge of healing, to make a difference in the lives of others. But it was moments like this, quiet conversations, small moments of shared understanding, that made all the work feel worth it. In her, Ethan had found more than a patient. He had found a curious, strong being who wasn't just healing physically, but learning how to live again. No matter the weight of her legacy, Ethan had been on Auras for several months now, helping not only Naira, but many others, both human and alien. Slowly, he had grown used to the quiet life on the peaceful planet. But despite the tranquility around him, things were starting to change. Naira had fully recovered. She was back to her old self, strong and confident. However, she wasn't just the alien princess she once was. Through their time together, something had shifted. Naira had found a new sense of purpose, a new direction. But she wasn't the only one changed. Ethan had grown fond of her, more than he ever expected to. In the days that followed, Naira became more open with him, her curiosity about human life expanding beyond simple questions. She began to ask him about his past, his family, and what motivated him to become a doctor. The conversations were always light at first, but there was always an unspoken connection between them, one that neither of them was willing to acknowledge. One evening, just as the two of them sat in the courtyard enjoying the sunset, the air was filled with a subtle tension that neither could ignore. Naira's silence grew heavier, and Ethan couldn't help but notice how she stared at him intently, as though trying to figure something out. Finally, she spoke up. "Ethan," she said softly, her voice steady yet with a hint of uncertainty. "I've been thinking a lot about everything." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "You've done so much for me, and for my people. You saved my life and helped me understand things I never thought about before. I want to offer you something in return." Ethan tilted his head, sensing something deeper in her words. He wasn't sure what she meant by offering, but he didn't interrupt her. Naira continued, her expression becoming more serious. "I spoke to my father about you, about what you did for me, and how you changed my perspective. He's grateful, more than he has ever let on. But I feel indebted," she said, looking away briefly, as if the weight of what she was about to say was becoming heavy. "I've thought about how I could repay your kindness. I know that no amount of gifts, wealth, or honor can change what you've done for me. But," she turned to face him again, her eyes locked onto his, "I want to offer you a chance, an opportunity I can never give to anyone else." Ethan's heart skipped a beat, unsure of where the conversation was heading. "What kind of opportunity?" he asked gently. Naira took a deep breath, steeling herself. "I would like to propose an alliance between my people and yours, Ethan. An alliance of cooperation, a chance for you and your kind to stand with us in the face of any challenge. I know the humans are still seen as outsiders in the galaxy, But with your help, we could bridge that gap. Ethan blinked in surprise. The idea was certainly unexpected. He had known that Naira was a person of great influence, but he hadn't expected such an important offer to come from her. But as Naira spoke, a quiet thought crossed Ethan's mind. Was it truly an alliance of two worlds she was seeking, or something else? A much more personal invitation. As an alien princess, she had the power to offer many things, but the offer was clearly coming from her heart. The idea that she would think of him, a human, in this way was almost too much for Ethan to comprehend. Naira gave him a moment of silence, waiting for him to respond. I understand if you're not ready to accept, but I wanted you to know that the choice is yours. Ethan took a long breath, gathering his thoughts. He had never been one for politics. He was just a doctor, here to heal people, to help them. The idea of becoming entwined with the royal family, especially in such a personal and permanent way, was overwhelming. He wasn't sure how to navigate it. After all, this wasn't just about treaties or alliances. It was about trust, mutual respect, and something more. What exactly are you asking for, Naira? He asked, his voice quiet but earnest. Naira stood up from her seat and walked a few steps, her back to him for a moment. I'm asking for more than just a partnership, Ethan. I'm asking if you would join me, not just in a political sense, but in a way that's deeper. I have spent my life worrying about my future, my duty, but now I find that all I want is to be part of something real. I want to live without the burden of royalty, without the expectations that I have carried my whole life. Ethan stood up, his heart racing. This wasn't just an offer of alliance. This was something far more personal. She wasn't just asking him to stand beside her. She was asking him to share in her journey, to leave behind everything that had once defined her as the alien princess and begin something new. He looked into her eyes, searching for the right words. Could he, a mere human, live up to such a grand proposal? Was he ready for everything that this would change? But then, in the quiet stillness of the moment, Ethan knew the answer. He stepped closer to her and gently said, I don't have all the answers, Naira, but maybe we can find them together. Naira smiled, the weight of the conversation lifting. I think we can, Ethan. I think we can. The days after Naira's proposal were filled with change. Ethan had never been one to shy away from challenges, but the weight of the decision now lay heavy on his shoulders. The quiet nights, once soothing, now seemed endless as his mind wandered over and over to the question Naira had put before him. An alliance, an invitation, not only for cooperation, but something much more personal, something unexpected. The future ahead seemed unclear, like a path covered in mist that he wasn't sure he was ready to walk. Yet, despite his uncertainty, Ethan knew one thing for sure. His connection with Naira had grown into something undeniable. It wasn't just about healing her wounds or providing medical treatment anymore. They had shared so much: grief, joy, curiosity, and understanding, and that had made all the difference. Naira, too, was changing. No longer the solemn alien princess burdened by her kingdom's expectations, she was now a person who wanted more than just her title. The proposal she had made, though spoken with grace, carried an intensity that Ethan could feel in his very bones. She was asking him to step into her world, to trust each other completely, to unite two very different cultures in ways that neither of them fully understood. It was terrifying, yet somehow, with her beside him, it also felt possible. One morning, as Ethan walked toward the med-bay, he spotted Naira standing near the balcony overlooking the gardens. The golden glow of the planet's twin suns bathed the courtyard in warmth, but she stood in solitude, her posture rigid. When she heard his footsteps approaching, Naira turned toward him, a quiet expression on her face. "Morning," Ethan said gently as he came up beside her, giving her a warm smile that was full of the comfort they had come to rely on with one another. Naira returned the smile, but there was something different in her gaze, something thoughtful. "Ethan," she said softly, her voice carrying a sense of calm resolve. "I've been thinking. It's been days since I made my offer, and I need to know, are you certain about the future you're choosing? This isn't something small, something that can be taken lightly." Ethan paused, considering her words. He wasn't sure if there ever would be a moment when everything felt completely clear. There was still fear inside him, a fear of what lay ahead, of stepping into the unknown. But there was also something else, a quiet sense of peace, a belief that this path, strange as it seemed, was where he was supposed to go. "Naira," Ethan said finally, his voice steady, "I've always believed that to heal others, you have to be willing to accept the challenges. But this is different. What you're asking of me isn't just about making the right medical decision or helping in small ways." He took a step closer, looking her in the eyes. "This is about building something together, something new." Naira met his gaze, her breath catching in her throat. "But this isn't only your choice," she said, her tone laced with both honesty and vulnerability. "You know, there's always a cost when you forge a new path. My world is vastly different from yours. You'll have to leave behind your life, your people. I won't ask you to give that up lightly." The weight of her words pressed into Ethan's heart, but he wasn't afraid. He had never been afraid of the unknown. It was the unknown that had driven him to be a healer in the first place, to reach out, to change lives, to help others in ways they didn't expect. It was his calling, his purpose. "Maybe I don't have all the answers," Ethan replied, his voice quiet but firm. "But if I didn't try, if I didn't give this a shot, I would regret it for the rest of my life. We have a chance to help, Naira. Not just one world, but two." Naira's face softened at his words. She stepped closer to him, her hand brushing against his arm. "I knew I wasn't alone in this," she whispered. "And it means everything to me." As the sun continued to rise in the sky, casting an ethereal light on the gardens below, something deeper unfolded between them, a bond formed from vulnerability, trust, and a shared understanding. They had made their choice, one that carried with it risks and sacrifices, but also hope. For the first time since their journey had begun, Ethan felt the stirrings of something that wasn't just about their immediate futures. It was about possibility, of growth, of change, of living life without the burdens they had carried before. They were no longer just healer and patient, no longer separated by worlds. They were two souls, aligned in purpose and destined to write a new story together. Ethan knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but with Naira by his side, he was willing to face it all. In the weeks that followed, their bond strengthened. Naira's presence became a comfort to him, while he became her unwavering support. There were many obstacles to face, challenges that neither of them had anticipated, but each trial brought them closer. Ethan found himself pulled deeper into the mystery of Orcs and the struggles of the royal family. Though it wasn't easy, he was beginning to understand just how much of a difference one person could make, how much of a difference one shared moment of kindness and understanding could open up. As he and Naira worked together, each day seemed to promise something new, something unexpected. They didn't know what the future held, but together they would face it with hope, with courage, and with the certainty that this journey was just beginning. As time passed, Ethan grew more accustomed to life on Orcs. His role had changed from healer to advisor in many ways. The citizens of the planet, initially skeptical of a human in their midst, began to accept him. His work in the medical chambers continued, but now he was also helping Naira navigate the complex political environment of the royal court. But despite the growing camaraderie between him and the alien king's people, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something was brewing beneath the surface, something that could change everything. It all started on a quiet evening, not unlike the others before it. Ethan and Naira had spent the day in the palace's high hall, discussing strategies to improve relations between humans and the people of Orcs. The words they spoke seemed innocent enough, but there was a tension in the air, a weight they both could feel. When the evening arrived, Naira invited Ethan to walk with her by the riverside, a place where they had often shared moments of peace and quiet. The soft sound of the water flowing around the rocks created a soothing atmosphere, and the stars above twinkled as if watching over them. They walked side by side, their pace slow and reflective. "Have you ever wondered, Ethan?" Naira began, her voice soft and thoughtful, "whether we are meant to change the fate of our worlds, or whether we are merely part of something much bigger than ourselves?" Ethan stopped walking, looking over at her with curiosity. "I think about that a lot. None of us can know the future, but I believe we have a role to play in shaping it, no matter how small. My choice to be here, to help, was a part of something greater. Maybe that's what makes this journey so important." Naira nodded, her gaze distant. "Sometimes, though, it feels like too much responsibility. People look to me because of who I am. They expect me to solve all their problems. But," she turned to face him, her expression serious, "what if I don't have all the answers? What if we're both walking into a storm we don't know how to face?" Ethan could see the vulnerability in her eyes, something that she rarely allowed others to see. The princess, strong and bold on the outside, was revealing the cracks that even she hadn't fully noticed. His heart softened, and he placed a reassuring hand on her arm. "I don't have all the answers either," Ethan said. "I came to Auras to help heal, to fix what was broken. But I've come to realize that healing isn't just about fixing injuries. It's about giving people a chance to grow, to evolve, and to make things better." He smiled, a gentle warmth in his voice. "We're in this together, Naira. Whatever happens, we're partners in this." For a moment, there was silence between them. Then, Naira spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "Trust is the key to all of this," she said. "But trust is difficult. There are still many who do not trust you, Ethan. There are rumors about the humans' true intentions. Some are even questioning my decisions to ally myself with you." Ethan sighed, the weight of her words settling in his chest. He knew that some would see his presence as a threat. He had heard the whispers around the palace. People spoke of a future where humans would not just be doctors and healers, but potential conquerors. Naira had been the one to argue against those voices, but how much longer could she keep the court on her side? "That's something I've been worried about too," Ethan said after a long pause. "But I didn't come here to fight. I came because I believe in the good of people, in the belief that, over time, we can learn to trust one another, no matter what anyone else thinks." Naira smiled, though it was faint. "And what happens if our trust is tested?" she asked softly, her eyes searching his. Before Ethan could answer, a figure emerged from the shadows, a royal guard sent by Naira's father, King Kale, who had summoned them to the castle. Naira's face changed instantly, her earlier vulnerability replaced by the mask of the leader. She turned to Ethan, her voice now sharp with purpose. "It seems that the moment for quiet reflection has passed. Let's see what my father wants." They made their way toward the palace, where the king waited. The tension between them seemed to build as they walked through the long hallways. The air was thick with expectation, and Ethan couldn't help but wonder whether this summons was about the conversation they had just had, whether his relationship with Naira was about to become more complicated. Inside the royal chamber, King Kale stood at his throne, his regal presence filling the room. His sharp eyes flicked over Ethan, taking him in as though he were assessing a threat. Naira walked to his side and bowed slightly in respect. "Father, you called for me," she asked calmly. The king glanced at her before speaking to both of them. "Yes, Naira. There are whispers among our people. They question your decisions, your alliance with this human. And I must say, I am not certain this trust you speak of is wise." Naira's posture stiffened, but her voice remained steady. "Father, Ethan has helped me when no one else could. He's earned my trust, and that trust is not only for him, but for the future of our people." The tension in the room was palpable as the king's sharp gaze lingered on Ethan. "We will see. Actions speak louder than words." Ethan stood silently, feeling the weight of the test before him. Trust had never been so important, and he understood that the coming days would demand more from him than he had ever imagined. After the royal meeting, the tension in the air seemed to follow Ethan wherever he went. King Cale's words lingered in his mind. Actions speak louder than words. What would the king expect him to do now? More importantly, what would Nyra do? His bond with her was stronger than ever, but the political storm they faced was growing fiercer by the day. Ethan spent his days in the royal chambers, tending to wounds and offering his advice. Though many in the palace admired him for his skill, a few still whispered behind his back, questioning his true purpose on Orcs. He could feel the pressure building. How long could he keep proving his worth? Nyra tried her best to shield him from the worst of the rumors, but she couldn't hide the strain in her eyes. She came to him less often, her duties to the throne taking up more of her time. When they did speak, it was always about politics, what needed to be done, what decisions had to be made. The personal connection they had shared seemed to be slipping away, replaced by the demands of the crown. One evening, Nyra appeared at Ethan's door unexpectedly. Her face, though regal, bore a look of exhaustion. Ethan had never seen her quite like this. She walked into his quarters without a word, her eyes filled with something he couldn't quite place. "What's wrong?" Ethan asked, his voice gentle. Nyra hesitated, clearly struggling with something deep within her. Finally, she spoke, her voice thick with emotion. "My father, he's going to send a delegation of ambassadors to Earth. He believes the time has come to discuss an alliance, a formal agreement." But she paused, looking up at him with troubled eyes. "There are people who fear you, Ethan. They see you not as a healer, but as a threat. I don't know how much longer I can protect you from their growing suspicions." The weight of her words settled in the room, and Ethan felt a deep ache in his chest. He had come to care for Nyra, but it was clear now that her world was much more complex than he had ever imagined. Not only was she a princess, but she was also a symbol of unity, and right now, that unity was at risk. "What do we do?" Ethan asked quietly. Nyra's voice faltered. "I wish I knew the answer. I don't want to lose everything we've built, Ethan. I don't want to push you away. But the pressure is mounting." Ethan understood the gravity of her situation. "You don't have to push me away. I'm not going anywhere, Nyra. Not as long as you need me." His words were met with a fragile smile, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. There was so much on her shoulders, and even though Ethan tried to reassure her, he knew things were changing, possibly forever. That night, as Ethan lay in his quarters, trying to sleep, his mind raced with all the possibilities of what was to come. Earth was an entire world away, and now it seemed that the fate of both planets was in jeopardy. Could one human's actions really make a difference in a galaxy that was so vast? His answer seemed more uncertain now than ever. The following day, King Cale summoned Nyra to another meeting. This time, he addressed both of them, the princess and the healer. "As you know," the king began, his tone firm but controlled, "I've made a decision about Earth's involvement with Orcs. We will send an ambassadorial fleet to Earth to discuss our potential alliance. We will need humans to cooperate with us, but not all of them will share your ideals, Nyra. This is not just about trust. It is a political decision." Nyra stood tall, her royal composure back in place. "Father, I have already spoken to Ethan about these matters. He and I are aligned on our vision for peace between our worlds." King Cale eyed them both with suspicion, his gaze flickering over Ethan. "I want your cooperation, human. But I also want proof. Proof that you are not working to destabilize our society. Trust, as we both know, is not simply given, it is earned. The ambassadors will test that." Ethan could feel the weight of the king's words in his bones. A test. What kind of test did the king mean? And how could he prove his loyalty? As he and Nyra left the royal chambers, she turned to him with a troubled expression. "The pressure is rising," Nyra said. "But perhaps this could be an opportunity for us to show that Earth and Orcs can truly work together, despite our differences." Ethan nodded, though doubts clouded his mind. He had tried so hard to prove his loyalty. But now, it seemed his actions had to do more than just heal wounds. They had to heal the mistrust that stretched across their entire relationship. And the biggest test was still ahead. The day of the ambassador's arrival was one of great anticipation. The royal palace of Orcs was abuzz with activity, as the preparations for a peaceful delegation from Earth were underway. Ethan stood in the courtyard, observing the bustling teams of servants and soldiers, each preparing for the significant visit. It was a day that would define the future of two worlds, Earth and Orcs. Naira had grown distant the past few days. Her father's demands, combined with the mounting pressure of the delegation, had put a strain on their relationship, though she had never explicitly stated it. Ethan could tell that the choices before them were not as simple as they once seemed. As evening approached, King Kale called for the royal gathering. Naira had to present herself as both the protector of Orcs and as a daughter trying to heal the broken parts of her planet. She would soon address the Earth ambassadors, and Ethan. He had been told to stay out of sight. His presence would only complicate matters. But Ethan wasn't one to hide away when there was work to be done. He had healed many wounds on Orcs, both physical and emotional, but today he felt a different kind of tension in the air. He had to make his move if things were going to turn out well. If he and Naira were going to show that humans and aliens could coexist peacefully, now was the time to act. The grand hall was magnificent, adorned with the royal banners of Orcs and Earth's diplomatic insignia. The Earth ambassadors were an impressive sight, dressed in their formal uniforms. Ethan observed from a distance, hoping that Naira could manage to convey the deep bond between them, the human healer and the alien princess. But deep down, he felt uncertain. Would it be enough to show Earth's goodwill? When the ambassadors were finally presented, the tension in the air became almost suffocating. King Kale addressed them first with his usual commanding authority, introducing Naira as the princess and protector of Orcs. Then it was her turn to speak. She stepped forward, her regal grace impossible to ignore, yet her expression was one of serious determination. She didn't look at Ethan as she spoke, her eyes focused entirely on the Earth delegation. Ethan stood in the back, hoping that Naira would see him, would feel the unspoken connection they shared. I stand before you today, not just as a ruler, but as someone who believes in the future we could build together, Naira began, her voice steady and clear. Despite our differences, despite what others say, there is a truth that cannot be ignored. If we come together, if we trust one another, we will be able to accomplish more than either of our worlds could ever dream alone. Her words resonated in the hall, but there was still a heaviness to her tone. She knew it wasn't enough. It couldn't be. There were still fears of what Earth and humanity might truly bring. But before anyone could respond, Ethan stepped forward, surprising everyone in the room. I am a human, he said firmly, his voice cutting through the air. I've healed Naira. I've healed Orcs people. But what's most important is this. We're not here to take anything from you. We've come to help, to learn, to share. I am here to prove that Earth does not wish to conquer Orcs, but to stand side by side with you. The room fell silent at his words. For a brief moment, he wondered if he had overstepped. Would they truly accept this? Would Naira, his closest ally, understand? But as he turned to look at her, she gave him a small, knowing nod. For the first time in weeks, the two of them shared a look, one filled with understanding, trust, and more importantly, a new promise. This wasn't just about protecting their worlds. It was about showing that compassion and trust could shape the future. Ethan stepped aside to allow Naira to take over once more. She addressed both her people and the Earth delegation with even more strength now. You've heard from my closest ally. We can form the future we all want. Not by force, not by control, but through understanding. After a long silence, the Earth delegates murmured amongst themselves. It was clear the speech had made an impact, but their doubts still lingered. Finally, one of the senior ambassadors stood. His face was stern, but his eyes betrayed a subtle warmth. "We are willing to explore this path with you. Trust is something that needs to be earned, and so far, it seems you and your human friend have proven yourselves," the ambassador said. Naira let out a slow breath. She glanced at Ethan, who smiled back at her, a sense of pride and hope beginning to swell inside him. "But this is not the end," Naira added, her voice resolute. "It's only the beginning. We must work together every day from here on out, proving that we are worthy of this partnership." The evening came to a close, and as the ambassadors left for their temporary quarters, Naira found herself standing beside Ethan in the quiet of the hall. The first step toward peace had been taken, but Naira knew that it wasn't the end. There would be challenges ahead. "You did it, Ethan," she said softly, her gaze never leaving him. Ethan's smile widened. "We did it, Naira. Together." She nodded, a sense of determination entering her eyes once more. "Yes, together." And in that moment, amid the uncertainty of what lay ahead, they both realized that the future of both worlds rested on this simple truth. Through trust, understanding, and cooperation, they could shape a brighter, peaceful future for all.